everyone. This is the Golden Game Podcast, and I'm here with my co-host, Bash Gaming, Tiebreaker, and Diabolist. Now, I want to pass it here to Bash so he can start.
Okay, so a little bit of clarification real quick. Tiebreaker and Diabolist will join us when we go through the pick'em, as we will start with recruiting this week, and we're going to go straight down the list. We're just going to list out a few guys who are not too notable, starting with Buchanan Simmons. He's, of course, a wide receiver. He is playing this year for Allen High School. Denver Tech is the first-place team. Oklahoma's second. Third is University. A broken arrow for him. Oren Bradshaw's the next guy for Amarillo and Shreveport and Kansas A&M and McAllen, all four battling for Bradshaw, trying to get him. Harold Reed Jr., getting targeted by CAMU, ACU, Ardmore, LSU, and Texas. Those guys are going to try to battle for him. Eric Washington, Nebraska State, ACU, Ardmore, Denver Tech, and Shreveport. All these Big 12 teams trying to get Washington. Hivon, Broken Arrow, Odessa State, Little Rock, Ardmore, and Minnesota. And then finally, Rigoberto Ramirez, McAllen, BYU, Arizona, Ardmore, and Nebraska State are going after him. And now we got some notable guys to talk about that have commitments maybe. We also have the best JUCO guy, and that's where we're going to start. So Showstopper, tell us a little bit about Paris Austin, the best JUCO maybe we've ever seen.
This is going to be a little story, background. Paris Austin is originally from Arlington, Texas, but moved to Lubbock due to his dad being the receiving coach at Texas Tech. His dad used to play for Nebraska State in the late 80s, but his career was cut short due to torn Achilles. His mom went to Ardmore, was a star track runner, got bronze in the Olympics a few years later. And now let me tell you why he's a JUCO in the first place. So coming out of Central Redwood Prep, Paris Austin was the top receiver in his class, even being at number one. So before his senior season started, he was chosen for the U18 USA football team. So they had an exhibition against Canada U18's team. So the headlines for the game was top recruit versus Canada's wonder boy, a.k.a. Jean-Luc Martin. USA was winning the game 42-14 at the start of the fourth quarter when Jean-Luc Martin, Kiki Alonso, Paris Austin's quarterback, knocking out the QB, not meaning because he was already in the tackling position when the quarterback finally decided to slide. So out of nowhere, Paris Austin picks him up and body slams him to the ground, and a huge fight ensures. And while the security got in there, and they were both separated. So due to this huge fight between the U18 USA team and Canada team, it caught media attention. So both players were suspended their high school season that next year, and Paris Austin got all his offers taken from him, and now he ended up at Independence Community College, where he is starring in this next season's Last Chance U.
Of course, there is a little bit of a size difference when you talk about height with Paris Austin and JLM, Jean-Luc Martin. Jean-Luc Martin, though, is playing currently at Valor Christian High School in Colorado. He's yet to play it down yet, but that's where he is. He's going to start sometime in the near future. We're not quite sure. He's on he's dealing with a little bit of immigration issues, but he is enrolled in the school. He's just not able to play because he's always missing practices for stuff like that. But definitely some profane things. We tried to get an interview from JLM, and trust me, he did not have any filter. A lot of profane things said about Paris Austin. He just body slammed him. He says, quote, "He body slammed me so naturally because no hockey player, linebacker worth his height or his weight insult is going to take that." So he's basically saying, I'm not going to take something like that. That's why that fight ensued in that sort of environment. Let's go ahead and move on, and then we'll get to picks after we go ahead and go over some of the recruits. And we're going to start off with the other recruits that we're going to talk about today with guys who are soft commits, these guys who are kind of hinted in the past or leaned one way in the past with what school they're going to, hasn't quite verbally committed to that school. And we're going to start with Hassan Bonner. Now, Hassan Bonner, it sucks for him because he got injured in the exhibition game, the first game of the season in high school. However, this isn't an injury that is going. This is not one of the injuries that's going to linger on for him. It still is rough, though, to see him have to go through this situation. So all of thoughts and prayers there for Hassan Bonner. He's a tremendous football player, and I expect nothing but gratitude towards him from all of the teams that they're going to face in the Power Conference for high school this year. You know, as far as Hassan Bonner goes, in his first game, he did have 11 carries for 64 yards, didn't score a touchdown, but, you know, when you get injured like that, it's tough to see. But he is a soft commit to Penn State with Denver Tech and ACU looming, so let's see if they can lock him up. All right, next guy up. Do you want to take it, or you think I'm good to take this one?
Oh, you can take this one. I'll get a Paris Austin a comment from him later on towards the end of recruiting special.
Okay. So we're going to talk about I cannot say the name, Jones. Evalanjo Jones, or, you know, I have trouble with that name for some reason, but he's a solid player for sure to keep an eye on for the years to come. He's playing some good football in high school. He's currently a soft commit to Kansas A&M ahead of Denver Tech and ACU Midland State as well in there. But with that being said, we have a guy that is tremendously quick and able to fly to the football. And that's something that is not, as a safety, that's something that's just instinctful. It's not necessarily taught. It's not a it's a natural thing. It's a tremendously natural thing, and it's not something you can just replicate with just practice. Practice has a lot to do with it, but you can capitalize on that skill. Our third guy we're going to talk about, Jean-Luc Martin. We previously had mentioned him. He hasn't played this year yet, but he is committed, or at least hinted that he's going to commit sometime to McAllen. ACU, Alabama, Nebraska, and USC are the teams following that up, but it really looks like he's going to go to McAllen in this situation. But since he hasn't played, can't really make any declarative statements on how good he is because we haven't really seen him in American high school.
I have Trevor Kennedy, who recently committed to South Carolina, and he's currently going to school at IMG. This is what he told us. One of the reasons why he committed to South Carolina was because it was closer to home, and he thought that the SEC had better competition than the Big 12. He didn't really go full in depth why. That was just basically his short answers why he committed there.
All right, and by the way, I just want to set the record straight. I apologize for mispronouncing it. It's Evangelo Jones, all right? Evangelo Jones, that's the guy we're talking about, soft commit to Kansas A&M. He flies to the football for sure. Next guy we're going to talk about is Chichi Montoya. Montoya is commit to SMU, which is kind of ironic, because he's playing for a team currently that's the Mustangs with a similar logo at North Shore, and he's going to go to SMU. That is what it looks like. Now, he's of course not verbally committed, but he has hinted to SMU, and it looks like SMU is going to get him. Houston, Amarillo, and Odessa State in contention. But Chichi Montoya has 13 tackles on the year, 8 solo, 5 assisted tackles. 2 of them were for a loss. He does have 1 sack on the season, so he's having a good start to his senior year at North Shore. And the final guy we're going to talk about in terms of these soft commits that aren't verbal, they are indeed a kind of, we think they're going to end up going there. And the next guy is Colby Bolton. He goes to Dutch Fork High School out of Irmo, South Carolina. He's favoring Broken Arrow. He's actually looking Big 12 country. Maybe he wants to go somewhere else regional-wise. But Broken Arrow ahead of Missouri, Denver Tech, Kansas A&M, and Illinois with this guy. And Colby Bolton, you know, I've seen him, and he's a tremendous player. 12 tackles, 11 solos, so he's a sure tackler. And he's also got 1 assisted tackle, 3 tackles for loss as well. Tremendous player to watch. I really love watching the duo of him and Joe Sloan in high school. Tremendous linebacker that would be a super big get for Broken Arrow if they can go ahead and lock that up. And finally, we got one last commit to talk about. It is Jamil Aziz. And Aziz is leading the conference by a lot in receiving yards. Jameer Aziz, I said Jamil, it's Jameer Aziz, 25 receptions, 448 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So tremendous year so far as years kicking off. And that might have led to the commitment to LSU, in which he committed in the preseason at a preseason All-American game. And all he had to say about it, he just really loved the coaching staff there. They felt like there was a good history of receivers going through there with Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham. So he felt he wanted to be the next guy up, and that's really all he had to say to us. And so that'll be really all we have for recruiting. We're going to go ahead and open it up as we're going to get Tiebreaker and Diabolist in here.
Coming in the chat, Jean-Luc Martin wants to have a word about Paris Austin.
Oh, okay, this is breaking. Go ahead, right ahead.
I didn't expect this.
What's the quote?
Showstopper Bash, thank you for having me. Just to get it out there, I don't see what's so great about Paris Austin. I mean, yeah, congratulations. You can beat a bunch of people who play a different sport, and you can dominate a bunch of JUCOs. You know, that's not hard. They're JUCOs for a reason. You know, they suck. You know, people who go to JUCOs suck.
Quick question.
Yes.
What exactly, I get you have a history against Paris Austin, but what exactly really makes you think that you can go ahead and come on here and talk about another player like that, as you are only a 17-year-old kid who hasn't played yet this season and hasn't even gone to college, so you don't understand quite what the college game is like. So what credentials do you have to go ahead and make these comments?
It's simple. I play Canadian football. You know, 1 less down, 10 more yards.
Okay.
So
that doesn't necessarily make it harder. The talent, there's no real argument. The talent in America is much tougher, Jean-Luc, and that's probably why you went to Valor Christian, is to play tougher talent. With all due respect, again, to Canadian football and all this, it's great to grow the sport beyond our borders. But, so Jean-Luc, we do appreciate your comments here today. We're going to go ahead and move on, though, with the segments. So let's go ahead and get to Pick'em, in which we will go down game by game. This Big 12 is getting kicked off this week. And, guys, the first game up right off the bat, 12:30 p.m. on Saturday. It's going to be Nebraska State on the road at Little Rock. And, guys, Nebraska State has not had success against Little Rock the last couple years. So what do you guys think in this game?
Ooh, Little Rock versus Nebraska State. I don't know who's going to put up the most points in that one. I'll probably have to say Nebraska State. I got Nebraska State winning that one. Gunnar Rivers can't carry that team all by himself.
All right, Diabolist, I would like to hear what you have to say in response. Do you agree there or disagree? What would you like to say?
I'm going to disagree with Showstopper. I think Nebraska's woes against Little Rock continue. I just think that Gunnar Rivers is going to put them over the top.
Now, I'm going to go with Nebraska State in this game, and the reason is this. When you look at Nebraska State's defense, they might not be playing the most elite competition. The best team was Nebraska, and they did lose to them. And Northwestern's good. They're not that great on offense. They're a pretty average offense. With that being said, though, I don't know if Little Rock can go ahead and keep Gunnar Rivers protected long enough to really hold a firm grip on this game. And I feel like Nebraska State, it might be close, it might be gritty game on the road at Little Rock, but they're going to get after Gunnar Rivers. That offensive line is not good, and with that, it might force Gunnar Rivers to have some turnovers, maybe some crucial sacks and wasted plays that he can't really control. Gunnar Rivers isn't the entire team, so I'm going to go with Nebraska State in this ball game. And do we have tiebreaker on the line? I don't think so. I think we lost tiebreaker. All right, so next game up is going to be Denver Tech at Broken Arrow. In this game, people are actually calling the upset here. I don't personally see it, but let's hear what you guys have to say. Showstopper?
what not to say. I don't trust Brian Street to do anything. He can't beat Utah, so what makes you think he could beat Denver Tech, the kings of the Big 12? I'm just saying, they have another Heisman candidate. Was he second or third place in Matkovich? If I pronounced that correctly. If I did, my bad out there. But Brian Street cannot win anything. He has not won anything in his collegiate career. So what makes you think he's going to beat the top dogs? So you know who I got for this win.
Look, I'm not.
I'm going to have to agree with. I'm going to have to agree with Showstopper. Broken Arrow just doesn't. I just don't see it happening. Denver Tech is looking really good right now.
I will say this with the pass offense for Denver Tech not being that bad this year. In fact, they are the number 5 pass offense, and they're going to go up against the 113th pass defense. That's also a matchup that is going to be a disaster. And then on the flip side, it might be the number 1 pass offense against Cupcakes, though. And you're going up against a Denver Tech team who's had a pretty tough out-of-conference schedule, who's the number 3 pass defense in the country. This is a complete mismatch. I think it's a blowout. I can't remember which one, but I know one of the brothers did pick Uba in this game. I don't know what you see there. I got Denver Tech in a rout. It's going to be a blowout, I believe. So the next game up, we're going to go ahead and move to McAllen and Odessa State. McAllen at home against Odessa State. Odessa State had that weird loss against Louisiana, but they in all 3 of the other games, they really played well. And McAllen, they're also playing very good football, getting in the top 25. What a great matchup for week 1 of the Big 12. Who do you guys got?
I got McAllen. Odessa State, I still see inconsistency. Do they have good freshmen or recruits coming in, interested in them? But I don't see them winning this game. I see McAllen dominating, and I see the score about 50-21.
I'm going to have to agree. I think McAllen just outclasses Odessa. Odessa's in like a weird place right now, and I just think McAllen is the better roster, so they're gonna pull this one out.
I think we got another clean sweep here, and I got McAllen too. I don't think it's going to be necessarily a blowout, but I think it's going to be one of those games where really who's going to win throughout. You can kind of tell where this game is going, and then by the end, it's going to turn into probably about a 2-score win, maybe a 17-point win, something like that. But yeah, Odessa State's a weird team to try to figure out. They're so inconsistent to where you just cannot tell if they're going to go ahead and show up and surprise people, which they could. But I think on the road against a solid team with that defense, it's not going to work out for Odessa State. I got McAllen. Let's go 45-28. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next game right after that, and it's going to be Midland State and Ardmore. Arguably, and I think this isn't really arguably,
they're going to beat Ardmore.
As I stated before the season, Ardmore's going to fall off a cliff, and I have Midland State going 12-0 and win the conference. I see this being the downfall of Ardmore in what they are known. I see Midland State, destroying them, and Ardmore's not going to bounce back and probably lose the next week after that. I just see Ardmore falling off a cliff.
I will say this, though. Ardmore gets Midland State at home, and they're a solid team. Both these teams rated as A+s all across the board. Turnover differential does favor Midland State, and as does most other stats, but that rush defense is stifling. And I think if anyone can go ahead and shut down that run game of Midland State that's been getting better every single game, it seems, I think it would end up being Ardmore. Now, it's not an elite rush offense, for sure, but it is an offense, a rush offense that gets better every week. And Ardmore can go ahead and make them one-dimensional. And if they can do that, this is going to be a game in which I think Ardmore is going to
Midland State does have a Heisman contender in Claudio Keller.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about their team stats, not just Keller. Keller, if you can bring up Claudio Keller, as I said, if anyone really can do it, I think it's going to be Ardmore. They're number 4 in rush defense, and I think that's going to carry the cake. I think it's going to be a dramatic win. I think there's going to be a late score, whether it's a touchdown, a field goal to win the game, something like that. Ardmore Ardmore is going to go ahead and pull it off. I wouldn't be surprised if this goes in overtime. I also wouldn't be surprised if Midland pulls it off. All I'm going to say here is this. Midland can pull off this road test against Ardmore, a top 5 team. Midland State, I believe, will, without a doubt, win the conference. All right, so there's our prediction for that game. The next game is going to be a team that we've really fallen in love with as fans against a team that we've kind of forgotten about. They're the quietest number 2 team maybe ever, certainly in the history of this Big 12 conference. And this is Amarillo, and this is ACU. Powerhouse against bottom dweller. But guess what? U of A, guys, they competed with a solid team last week against Michigan State. They may have lost, but a lot would argue that they should have won. ACU has struggled as of late. Who do you guys got in this ballgame?
I want the fairy tale to continue, but realistically, I got ACU winning. They can't do anything without it. Amarillo has to give the ball to their kicker, their Heisman contender kicker. I'm just saying, that's how Amarillo wins. But realistically, ACU wins.
Yeah, this one's gonna bring them down to earth real quick. Amarillo's gonna come into conference play. They're 3-1, and it's all gonna come tumbling down here. ACU wins big.
Look, I was in love with the Amarillo story for a while. It was fun for us, all of us to talk about. But with that being said, the talent gap is super wide with ACU and Amarillo. And what Michigan State is also known for isn't necessarily having the most talent, but having the better coached team. So they can pull off games, as they did a couple years ago. They pull off close games. They do it on a consistent basis. I was about to bring up a couple past games, but there's too many to bring up with Michigan State. They struggle with worse teams, but they're better coached. They're able to pull those games off. Amarillo is not as good as that game really indicated. It would have been great for them to get that win, get 4-0, and maybe they can make a bowl game. But I think that was a must-win in terms of the bowl hopes, and that's kind of going to be – I agree. They're going to fall down to earth with a blowout loss against ACU on the road, and I think we all agree with that statement. This might be the other argument, though, as we transition for Game of the Week. We talked about Ardmore and Midland State. How about this game? Maybe a sleepy game. Kansas A&M at 4-0 versus Shreveport in the Shreve at 4-0. A lot of people love Kansas A&M, but even though they've struggled early, Shreveport in the Shreve. Who wins this ball game, guys?
Well, Shreveport, their only 2 losses the past few seasons at home has been to ACU. You can't just come into the Shreve and dominate. It's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be a competitive game, but I see Camu being the second ever team to do that.
I'm going to have to agree with you, Showstopper. I think that it's going to be a really close game. I feel like Camu does have the talent advantage, and that's going to put them over the top, but never expect to have an easy win in Shreveport.
This whole entire day I've kind of gone off of on paper, and I've been looking at the on-paper statistics, seeing where I can find a matchup and seeing where I can find where a team can go ahead and exploit the other team. There's not really a certain matchup. Now, of course, total defense is pretty good for Shreveport, but even then, there's not a specific matchup I can look at with this game that I can nod to Shreveport. But I think that factor of being in the Shreve is just too much to deny. And this is why my profile picture for this week, if you guys notice here on Discord, is the Shreveport logo. Because, well, they're my upset pick for the week. I'm trying to get a good feel about how much of an upset this is, but if I had to guess, Vegas would probably put this around 8.5 favoring Kansas A&M. Little 1 over or a half point above 1 possession. It's either going to be, is it going to be 1 possession or is it going to be more? And I think they win the game. I think they have a straight outright W in this game in the Shreve. So that'll do it for the picks, and I believe that'll do it for this podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it, and as do my co-hosts here, as we